Hello and welcome to Citizens Forum. This is being filmed on Wednesday, May the 14th in the Memorial Arena in Victoria. I'd like to start by thanking our great volunteer crew and the Shaw staff that makes it all happen. This is community television. The first part of Citizens Forum is always the Walter and Jack Show, and I'm going to start off with something I wrote. I usually don't write anything, but I wrote it down and I'm just going to read it. And I just read it a minute ago to see what it was, and I was quite surprised by what I'd written. So, I think the corporations are deliberately destroying our society in 1,000 different ways because they and the people who run them are completely and totally insane. People in this country are under attack by the corporations everywhere in our country. They deliberately create poverty. They deliberately create poor health and disease. They deliberately create debt and stress. The tar sands are poisoning people across Alberta. LNG is they plan for here to poison British Columbia. The corporations are undermining, I think, and hope to destroy public health care, public education. The entire justice system, they say, is coming apart now. Our democracy is gone. Our food is poisoned. I think also that they are deliberately trying to destroy the economy, so we will have nothing to fall back on except the tar sands and fracking and mining. And corporate politicians like Stephen Harper and Christy Clark are funding drug gangs by keeping marijuana illegal. We've got to change direction. We have to throw off this tyranny of the corporations and try to build a human society that works for people and for the environment upon which we all depend. That's a huge job, but we are literally fighting for our lives now and for the health of the planet upon which we depend, so we have to do it. Can we do it? I honestly don't know, but I think we have to try our best. And that's kind of, I feel, where we're at.
Well, who could argue with that analysis? I mean, a couple of things to broaden it out a little bit. I mean, if you look at a corporation, it's a legal construct. It's something that has been made to limit the liability of that corporation for whatever they're selling or whatever they're doing, and that protects them. Another thing you could say is, although corporations do have shareholders and all that, but in general, the corporations are controlled by a very small elite, and most of that elite are very rich. So focusing in on human behavior, you have to look at that elite and why they do what they do. And on the other side, of course, is government, where you really wish you had government that would go to bat for the people to counterbalance the agenda, the corporate agenda, which is to make profits at any other cost. It doesn't matter as long as they're making profits. And if we had a government in which would actually, limit their activities and force them to pay their workers properly and protect the environment and all that, I think we can get back to some kind of a balance. But and we're not going to change the corporate structure, but we possibly could change the political structure and make it more democratic. And also, I think that's where our hope may lie.
Yeah. The corporations have taken over the governments. That's a huge problem in this country. If our governments worked for us, then I think things would be a lot better in all respects.
Yeah.
Look at any issue. If we take health care, for example, in my opinion, and I've seen numbers that back this up, there has been a plan in place for the last more than 20 years, really 30 years, to take our money away from our hospitals and give it to the drug companies, and billions of dollars a year. That's exactly what's happening. They're taking billions of dollars of our money out of our hospitals, giving it to the drug companies. That's why they've closed down all the beds. That's why people can't get in. And I mean, beyond that, the drug companies have complete control, it seems, of our medical schools. And our doctors are trained to do nothing except give these horrendous drugs
Yeah.
that only cause more problems. And you know, I mean, that's healthcare. We can have a great healthcare system in this country, and even more importantly, we can have great health. But we're not going to have it as long as the corporations control the politicians and own the media. And those are the fundamental issues.
Well, fairness is always something you can talk about. Democracy and on the other side, we're now looking at behaviors, say with the medical authorities, starting with the chief medical health officer, is a form of tyranny, where real therapies and real strategies to help people's health are not being implemented because they have a power block of this chemical-based medicine, which is terribly flawed. And by the way, I read recently that 225,000 people die in North America every year from misdiagnosis and misuse of pharmaceuticals. You know, it's incredible how many people are dying, but they are getting away with it.
And being made sick, you know,
That's
sick for
right.
years before they die from the medicines they're taking.
Yeah, they're walking wounded. They don't want us really healthy. They want us moving and taking drugs.
Yeah.
And that's where they want to keep us for as long as possible, perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, it happens, you know, we're talking about healthcare, which is kind of provincial. If you move to the federal level, and within this same theme that the corporations are the ones who run the country, and they own the media, and they control the politicians. When I look at what's happening in Ukraine, and when I look at what is being told us through our media, it's the media is simply not telling us the truth, or even trying to tell us the truth. It's a propaganda story that we're being told. As I've said before, I have no idea what's going on in Ukraine. I don't know, but I've stopped believing what I'm being told in our media because they've lied to me my whole life.
Well, there's an agenda in the Ukraine, and it's people who like to have wars, and they got to have a war someplace, Jack. And Ukraine's probably just as good a place as any. They want to put pressure on Putin. There's some real political agendas going on, and you can count on the corporate media in the West to out and out lie to you about what's happening in the Ukraine. It's not up in the air. You can pretty well read what they're saying and flip it over and say, well, this is what must be really happening, because it doesn't make any sense otherwise. They invent these stories that just really doesn't fit in the Ukraine.
I read Zero Hedge, zerohedge.com, I think, has a story that Joe Biden's son, Joe Biden, the Vice President of the United States, his son was just put on the board of directors of the biggest private, I think, gas company in
natural gas
in Ukraine. You've heard it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a word in the media.
One might think that would be a conflict of interest.
Yeah,
but
so Joe, the Vice President's son, supposedly, reportedly, as they say on our corporate television, the Vice President's son reportedly has just been put on the board of directors of the largest, or one of the largest, private oil or gas companies in Ukraine. I mean, hello, is that not worthy of being told to people? But it's all a lie. And when you get down, you know, I mean, pick your issue.
Well, great topic, the Ukraine, and I've been reading and trying to figure it out, and it seems to be getting harder the more I read. I had a number of issues that I kind of looked at, and of course the smart meter issue. I have to bring it up because always something's happening. In this case, we have BC Hydro, who has implemented this new wireless consumer meter program that everybody must know about now, but they pulled out our old meters and put in these new wireless meters that transmit electromagnetic radiation. There's a lot of concerns about the health effects associated with that. And recently they've now told us that those who have opted out of the program, which they had a sort of a program that looked like an opt-out until you really looked at it. They're now saying those who have kept their meters, they're now going to have to accept a new digital meter, which is basically not a smart meter according to them, and that they will still have to pay a fee for not having a wireless meter, and because all these old meters are now have now worn out. All of a sudden, they're all worn out, or a good amount of them, which is, is such a trumped up thing that it's impossible to believe. But, they're robbing from us our rights. They're forcing us, people who are knowledgeable about the health issues and about the security issues and privacy, are being penalized by having to pay to keep something harmful from happening to them.
I'm paying $35 a month to these extortionists.
Yeah. Well, that is the definition of extortion. When you try to keep something bad from happening to you, you're basically being forced into a position that is extortion, and I wouldn't use that word lightly, but it's pretty clear here that their heavy-handedness and their monopoly of the electrical grid, and there's no recourse for people. This is terrifically unfair. Now, what went into this, and this is also an issue, of course, about the privacy issues of what these meters can collect. And if you watched CBC last night, they interviewed, they didn't interview Edward Snowden, but they interviewed some guy from the United States, was the head of the National Security Agency of the United States, and they collect data on everyone. And the Snowden, leaks were all about exposing the fact that the United States government, through this National Security Agency, basically collects data on everybody all the time. Now, one great way to do that is through technology such as smart meters. And they have now admitted that, in fact, when they're shipping equipment, when a company is shipping equipment to anyone that the National Security Agency is interested in, they get the product, from the post office. They take it and they implant surveillance technology into the product, wrap it all up and send it on to the client. So they are very willing to use surveillance technology on people, and that's a breach of so many rights and freedoms that it's and fundamental rights and freedoms. And because they have the ability to do that and they can act with impunity, this is a real threat to our way of life, to what we're all about, that we see as living in a democratic society. Now, on the health impacts, Dr. Martin Blank spoke at a forum last week, public forum, in which he touched on the issues around the health issues of this type of technology, and he pointed out very clearly that this is not a matter of debate. Every time you're exposed to this type of radiation, your body will react, the cells will react in a certain way, and perhaps we're going to be able to get a clip of that, or at least a website that we could have up on the screen that will lead people to Dr. Martin Blank's comments.
Martin Blank is a scientist and researcher from Princeton University.
We'd have to find the university. I think it's Cornell.
Okay.
Columbia, starts with a C, and he's a biologist that works for his whole life studying the effects of radiation such as cell phone radiation on human cells.
So what he's saying is, if you're using a cell phone, or if you're around Wi-Fi, which we all are now 24 hours a day, there is no question negative health impact.
It happens every time, including power frequency radiation that comes off your home appliances and stuff. So we have an industry that doesn't want to admit to that, but the evidence is very, very clear that there is a health impact. It's not a matter of opinion. It's just simply the cells respond in a certain way, and it's a very, very serious charge he's laying. But again, the regulators, who are, my belief, are controlled by the corporations, refuse to listen. And I think we're in this era where real voices and real professionals that really know what they're talking about are not being listened to, and this lack of fairness in sharing information and stuff is a huge problem. And that led me to this third issue, because we just found out through another website, and I wish I could quote that website, but where they were mentioned that Mayor John Raines of Metchosin had written a letter to the local newspapers discussing these issues and saying that whether or not this radiation is harmful or not doesn't really matter. You have the letter there, Jack?
Yeah. I'll just read the first paragraph. So this is from the mayor of Metchosin.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he says, "What I find most disturbing about BC Hydro's forced imposition of smart meters is how readily politicians of all parties have abandoned fundamental principles of a free society in order to accommodate bureaucratic expediency. Individual freedom demands that government has boundaries. As far back as the 1600s, the concept that individuals need sanctuary from government was established in British common law, and this is still applicable in British Columbia today. And the law clearly states that your home is your castle and the sovereign will not cross your threshold without following due process. Except now they have. In one stroke, the province is saying that lawful citizens no longer have a choice in what enters or leaves their homes." And that is John Rands, the mayor of Metchosin, talking about smart meters. And as far as I know, this was not printed anywhere, even though he sent it out to the media.
Well, that was the issue. He wrote that letter to the Times columnists in November. They chose not to print it. He also sent it around to the other local papers, none of whom chose to print it. I mean, it's such a common sense thing he's saying here. Whether or not you're worried about health issues or whether or not you're worried about surveillance issues, what you should be worried about, well, the other big issue to be worried about is the issue about privacy and what privacy really means in a free society.
And the principle that the government shall not be able to do this to you.
That's right. Yeah.
We don't give the government this power, but now,
Yeah.
on behalf of the corporations, they're taking it.
And that's what's so important. I mean, don't feel so bad that you don't get your letters printed in the papers when a mayor of in the region is writing, and they choose not to print his letter. And I'd like to put that up on a website also. Perhaps we'll figure out how to do that because, his voice should be heard. And we
I
are.
want to pick on the Times columnist here because the media is all the same from coast to coast to coast.
Yeah.
It is corporate owned and therefore totally, it doesn't work for us. That's all. It just doesn't work for us. It has a different agenda.
Well, they chose not to print it, so take it for what it is. It's it all comes back to that idea of what's fair and exchanging ideas, even if they're not true or even if they're wrong-headed, is still important. I mean, you don't always have to be right to express an opinion. The idea of what really makes a strong society, a cohesive society, and which people trust each other, which leads to democratic values and all that, is the ability, the freedom of speech, without worrying about repercussions. And we're not there, Jack. We're in a society now where you say some unpopular things, bad things can happen to you. And people are fearful to express their opinions, and that really creates such a damper on all other activities that we are sliding into an undemocratic state, let's say. You could call it a fascist state, but we are sliding into something that's really quite serious.
Yeah, well, there's no question about that. It's almost like you don't know where to go with it. I mean, we're under attack. I think that's how I see it. We're just under attack on all fronts. We don't even know there's a fight going on. Millions of Canadians don't quite see how powerful, or maybe they do. And, in our own way, we're all trying to do something about it. But, to me, this is the same issue. There was a story in the Vancouver province a little while ago about, it was the front page story. and just had to do with partying very loud partying in some condos in downtown Vancouver. And basically keeping all the neighbors awake. And there's nothing the neighbors can do about it. The police will not intervene, right? So in other words, the police are sanctioning the bullies and protecting the bullies. They are allowed to do whatever they want and keep the neighborhood awake whenever they want. And the authorities, our city governments, the police, allow it to happen. And that's what I mean. I mean, to me, I think the attack that we're under, it encompasses that. They want us to know that you have nothing. You have no power. You have no rights. And when we come to frack your neighborhood or put a smart meter into your house, it's exactly the same thing. And so there can't be any rules protecting us anywhere, because if there were, we could use them. So they don't allow them.
Yeah, and it flows right through all these governments and all these different individuals, like John Raines said about who's going to bat for us. You know, the federal government, you know, forget it right now, but the provincial government with Christy Clark and company, well, you know, we've seen what they want to do. But then you'd think, okay, the NDP can step up here. Come on, you guys. And you know, they sound great, and there are a lot of great people, and there's a lot of good MLAs, NDP and MLAs. It's a shame that they get tarred with the same brush. But I'm pointing my finger at them too and saying, step up here, you're an MLA. You know, your leader's not doing the right thing here. You know, there's a lot of things that happened around, for instance, the election that elected the Clark government that really were shenanigans that were illegal in my view, and the NDP leadership appeared to have participated in that. So they're now running this party, and I think they got to clean this up quite a bit before they'll have any legitimacy whatsoever in my mind.
Walter, thank you very much.
Always a pleasure, Jack.
Thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum. Welcome to segment 2 of Citizens Forum. Guest in this segment is Rick Habgood. We're filming on Wednesday, May the 14th in the Memorial Arena. Rick, you've been on several times, and we usually talk about democracy and especially voting systems, but we're going to start off today talking about
an issue.
Well,
another issue. And
clean coal.
Clean coal. So, in this this month's Wired magazine, the heading is "Coal. It's dangerous, it's dirty, and it's the future of clean energy."
Okay. Are they joking here?
And so I've done a show a while back. I did a show on CCS, which is carbon capture and storage.
Carbon capture and storage.
Okay, carbon
CCS.
capture and storage. And the process is called CCS. All right?
Yeah.
So what they do is as they're burning the coal, they capture the carbon dioxide. They put it through processes, okay? And it comes out the other end as sort of a liquid. And then they transport the liquid through pipes. And it could be 10 miles, it could be whatever. And then they go about 2,000 or 3,000 feet below the surface of the planet, the Earth, and where they have found this big cavern, all right? And then they start filling up the cavern with this CO2. Liquefied CO2.
To me, I've heard about this, and I think it's absolutely crazy.
Well, you know what? I think you're probably right. There's some really crazy numbers, though. Okay, and China is way out there when it comes to coal. 40% of all the world's electricity, 40% is produced from coal. It's huge.
Oh,
you know that. Oh, that number is just unbelievable. It's cheap energy. That's what it is. It's cheap. All right. And China could not be in the position it's in right now without coal.
You mean the position where people can't breathe in the major cities?
Well, you know what? We're going to get to that one.
Okay.
And there is a price for prosperity,
Yeah.
even though people don't see it. But
And
anyways,
what is prosperity? Is it?
well, you know, that's another issue. But you know, I remember Kevin Danaher getting just what you just said there. I remember you remember Kevin. Kevin said something on air with you and I, you know, and he said
Many years ago.
He said many years ago, he said we need a new definition of rich.
A new definition of rich.
Rich.
Yes.
Rich is when you have clean air. Rich is when you have clean water. Rich is when you have good natural food to eat and you're healthy. Then you're rich. And I agree with that. I remember we both agreed with 100%. So anyways, you know, it's 3/4 of China's power comes from coal. 3/4, Jack, of all the power that China uses up comes from coal. So it's huge. And China produces over half the world's cement and over half the world's steel. And unfortunately, the cement and the steel cannot be created without coal. Every single cement plant here in BC, it doesn't matter where it is, relies upon coal.
Or electricity, at
Create
least.
the,
Does it rely upon coal or just the electricity?
no, relies on coal, because coal, what they do is they bake the coal into a product called coke. And it's the coke that they use to burn everything. It's got to get to a certain heat, and apparently only coke will do it. So anyways, now I'm not a scientist, so I don't know. So so China unfortunately burns more coal than all the world put together. If all the nations of the world were to put out how much they burn coal, China would be greater.
So China's burning about half the world's coal.
It's so incredible. It's just incredible. And China emits 25% of the world's greenhouse gases. So the International Energy Agency, which is a Paris-based think tank of 28 nations, predicts that China will double its coal plants by 2040.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's going to happen.
Well,
I think
really
already,
hope you're right.
Yeah, I mean, I've been reading a little bit about what the political economy stuff in China, and they're saying we've got to slow down. They are starting to slow down because they know they can't do it.
It's catastrophic. That's basically it.
I mean, the people are being poisoned. The country is being poisoned. The crops are being poisoned. I mean, it's the same here, but because you have the world's biggest economy now, we're very close to it.
Yeah.
And concentrated in these few places. I mean, you know, we certainly did it here, or at least in the United States, and now it's just moved over to the next place. And
Yeah.
you can't, I think everybody is starting to realize that we'd better choose your new definition of rich, because the
Yeah.
old
Oh,
definition
yeah.
we can't do anymore.
No.
You know, I'll just say something about coal. We use hydropower a lot
That's
here
right.
in British Columbia. And I've looked a little bit into the CO2 impacts, or at least the greenhouse gas impacts of hydro, which is, of course, creating reservoirs and dams and using water to create electricity. And I was quite surprised to find out that that is also a huge greenhouse gas creator, because when you flood reservoirs and you flood the vegetation and you flood the soils, they give off methane. Methane is about 20 times as powerful a greenhouse gas as is CO2. So, I mean, the people in the know this. They just don't tell us. They tell us, oh yeah, it's clean water energy. Yeah, right. It's not clean. It never has been clean, never was clean, and they know it's not clean in greenhouse gas terms, but they don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
well,
coal
you know,
is terrible.
Every single
so is this.
energy
Source.
process has its downside. Even solar panels, Jack.
I'm sure.
You got to build the solar panels,
Yeah.
and it's made out of plastic. So, you know, and that has to be made somehow. And all the components of the solar panel have to be mined.
Have to be,
Mined comes from
yes,
mines,
exactly.
you know? So it's,
So the number one way really then is reduce, 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 reduce. We can all use less. We can certainly use less here. People in third world countries, they're already using very little, but we
Yeah.
can certainly
yeah.
cut down. We,
But it ain't
we
gonna
won't.
happen. You know, people want wealth. You know, it's just as simple as that.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so you have to be able to look at that and just face that reality.
But I just read today, I think that in Germany they use, do you know the,
We're
a
gonna
third?
get to that.
Okay,
See, there's,
okay.
yeah, you're getting, you're, see, you know too much.
I don't know enough.
You don't know enough. So, anyways, the CCS. Now,
Carbon capture.
oddly enough, the CCS, right? If we continue to burn the coal, and if the coal production increases, then it's going to be very catastrophic for the planet. So that sort of, you know, when I was reading the article, I couldn't, you know, something really stood out. Why is Germany and the Scandinavian countries moving away from coal at such a fast pace that in Germany, okay, in Germany, this is just very recent news. In Germany, Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany, has had to put the brakes on the alternate energy because the coal industry in Germany and the coal power plants in Germany, nobody wants the hydro from them or the electricity from them. They're all going towards alternate. The population in Germany wants alternate energy. So what's happening is that the coal producers, the factories, the power plants are shutting down because there's no
Market for their power.
yeah, no market for it, that particular product. Everybody wants solar and wind, right? So Merkel had to put the brakes on the alternate just a little bit, not much, but just enough, because the coal industry in Germany has already given in. They've already, you know, said, Uncle, they've already said, look at, you know, give us some time here. We want to change over. And they want to do the investments, right? They want to get out of coal. So what Merkel's doing is giving them time to catch up, switch over to alternate, and use their resources for creating alternate electricity.
Yeah. So I think also in Germany they just use a lot less electricity per person
They do.
than we do.
They're very conservative.
Yeah. And you know, we can do that. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
as it said in this article I read, the Germans are not living
No,
a
they're
life
not.
of poverty,
No, they're not.
but they use a lot less energy than we do. We need the kind of leadership that is going to take us in that direction, and we
Yes.
don't have
Well,
it.
that's when you get into electoral systems and, you know, and what the electoral systems create. And their electoral system creates that wonderful scenario that you're just describing.
Yeah, so Germany has a voting system which is proportional
It is.
representation,
It is.
and that's created a political system and a governing system that allows what people want to start to happen. Here, with our first past the post voting system, and whoever thinks voting systems are that important, but they are.
Oh, they're
They
everything.
are.
They're everything.
That's why they won't let us change.
Yeah. Well, let's face it. We're just going to keep going until it happens. But so the environmentalists are saying that in the States and in worldwide, the environmentalists are saying, look at this whole CCS. The people that are behind it are the coal-producing countries. They
Yeah.
want to sell their product.
Yeah.
And you know, you can't help but get a little cynical on this. You know, like they're selling a product that's going to kill our society eventually. You know, they're going to create a situation where what we've created will not be able to be maintained, and it's all going to fall down, all for the sake of a few dollars right now. And that's our North American style. That's just the way it is. North America, including Canada and the United States, they're gung-ho to sell all the fossil fuels. They want to sell all the fossil
Yeah,
fuels they can.
we seem
because
to be the worst right now,
Yeah,
Canada
it's-
and the United States.
it's
In
money.
terms, yeah, it's money, but especially in the northern European countries, they've moved away from fossil fuels
They have,
and have built a more futuristic looking scenario,
yes.
which at least isn't as bad, I think, as the disaster that we are. I mean,
Oh,
you were in
not even
Germany.
close.
Yeah, you were in Germany a few months ago. I mean, I find that walking now, just walking used to be very pleasant. But I live, in the not downtown, but off of downtown in the Fernwood-ish neighborhood. And I walk around, through James Bay, through Fairfield. And I find that walking is no longer that pleasant because the sidewalk's only 5 feet wide or 6
Yeah.
feet wide. And on that sidewalk, you got people walking in two directions, you got bicycles going in two directions, you got skateboarders going in two directions, and you got these electric scooters going in two directions. And there's no rules and there's no enforcement. Nobody knows what to do. But you said in Germany, it's not really like that.
No.
And I mean, this is important. This is how people walk around. And
Well, that's why I think you hit, and that's why I see an article like this is really misleading. It says here clean energy, right?
yeah.
It's too bad that it's coming from a major magazine like this one.
Well, maybe I thought they were joking on the headline.
No,
there,
they're
where
very
they say,
serious.
Oh, they're serious. So they're saying, Wired Magazine is saying coal is the future of clean energy.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's completely crazy. Can we just talk about how people get around in Germany a little bit?
Well, sure, if you want
You
to.
said when you were
Wait a minute,
there.
before we do
Okay.
that, let me just, there's an upside to this.
Okay.
The pollution is so bad there that in this one particular city, 10 million, so bad that nobody leaves their houses. You can't drive because you can't see the road because of the smog. Okay? Now, the upside of that is that an American company is selling these masks that they have to use, and they've got logos on them.
Logos.
So you're walking around with a McDonald's logo.
Well,
Isn't that disgusting? I mean, that's capitalism,
that's
right?
capitalism at its best.
No kidding.
At its best, yeah.
So Germany, yeah, right.
So you said that there was a sidewalk for people walking. There were
Yeah.
bike lanes that
Yeah.
were separated, and then there's the streets. And you didn't feel when you were in Germany, in the major cities, you didn't feel it was a car culture there.
It's just different. It's very. Everybody has their place, in at least the Berlin. That's where I was, Berlin, right? And there was designated bike lanes, designated walk lanes, and if a bike goes onto the street, the motorists beep him off the street. Literally, it was funny, because you see one guy getting into onto the road, then all of a sudden there's 10 cars honking at him. They won't let you go on the road. You got to go on your bike lane. And the same thing with a pedestrian. If a pedestrian goes into the bike lane, the biker goes by and pushes him up.
Sounds like outright warfare.
I know.
That doesn't sound so good either,
Well,
especially for
everything-
tourists.
Very, very, very. It happened to me, Jock. That's why I know. Like I was in the bike lane and I got shoved back into the walking lane.
Is this on all streets or major streets?
It's
or-
a lot. Most of the streets, yeah. All the main streets are like that.
So when you were walking around in Germany, how did you feel?
I loved it. It was clean, very clean. Streets were clean.
You weren't being run over
There
by
was-
bicycles
there-
except when you strayed
What I
into
love
their
to
lane.
say is not what I saw, but what I didn't see.
Yeah.
I didn't see anybody sleeping in doorways. I didn't see anyone on the street begging for money because they had to. I didn't see anybody picking up pop bottles or beer bottles and dragging around a shopping cart. I didn't see anything like that. What I saw was just everybody doing their thing, going to work, and just what you would say would be like or what you would want as just a normal day.
Rick, we're out of time, believe it or
No
not.
kidding, 18 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So we can do better. I think that's the message. We
Yep.
can do better, and we'd better start Thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum.
Welcome back. My name is Cameron Moffat, and you are watching Choices. If you're like myself, it's very easy these days to get confused on what we should be eating, how we should be eating, and when we should be eating. And today, we're hoping to address that confusion with somebody in the show who has some expertise in this field. Quite often, I find that people are becoming slightly afraid of food, and that's really not to our health benefit. So, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Suzanne Brett. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Suzanne is a registered holistic nutritionist, and today we're going to find out the difference between that type of designation and other types of designations you'll hear of often in the field. Maybe that's a good place to start, Suzanne. What is the difference between a registered holistic nutritionist and, say, a dietitian, or simply the designation of nutritionist?
Well, first of all, mostly they deal with the Canadian Food Guide, and I don't.
Okay, so let's come back to that in a little bit. Okay.
I mostly focus on the client themselves rather than the disease or the symptom that they're dealing with.
Okay.
So I might do something like start at the core of the problem, or go back to their childhood and do a little bit more detective work, and see where things are really where the problem was really starting to arise for them. We might look at more things, metabolic issues that they might have, or underlying disease.
Now, what do you mean by a metabolic issue? How would that present itself?
Well, let's say, for example, they're dealing with weight gain.
Okay.
They might not consider a hormonal problem or a thyroid issue, for example.
Okay.
And so that's something I might look at, and I might use other modalities to get in there and deal with the problem. Whereas a lot of dietitians and nutritionists are trained, and this is general, a lot of them use other practices as well now, but for the most part, they're just looking at the disease and the symptomology and treating it like that instead of
So
going
that's
into
why
the
I guess your term
details.
holistic nutritionist comes in, that you're looking at the whole.
Yeah.
And that certainly seems to be the way that a lot of modalities are going now. I mean, you think of TCM and you think of nutrition, DOs now, like myself, and also doctors of naturopathic medicine. They're looking at the whole person.
Exactly.
That seems to be the better way to go.
It's basically the differences between Eastern and Western medicine practices.
Okay. All right. So what got you into this field originally? What brought you into it?
I've always loved food. I think that's where it started. And not in abundance or anything. I just was really passionate about different types of food, and not eating what everyone else was eating. I kind of wanted to be different. And then I had a sort of coaching ability that came naturally to me as a child and as a teenager, and an intuitive way of sort of dealing with people. And I think that just coincided when I brought the two together and decided to go to school for it was counseling and food, and what does that mean? And that was holistic nutrition and being a consultant in that way. And my mother was sick when I was a teenager, or before I was a teenager, when I was about 9 or 10, and she really transformed her life through food, and she really changed her diet. And I think that was a little bit eye-opening for me at that time. And yeah, I was a vegetarian really young and really experimental with stuff like that, and made sure I got the right amount of protein in an intuitive way. So I like to share that with everyone else.
What's your opinion of all the diets? I mean, if we look over the last 10 years, I can count probably 10 different major diets that have come through our culture.
Yeah.
And not every one of them, but many of them are saying opposite things. So if someone comes into your office and say, look, I've got this problem, and I've tried these, and these diets, how do you address that? How do you approach that person?
Well, it depends on the person, and sometimes I'll just ask them why they were attracted to that type of diet, and what their main health concern or goal is, and sort of start there, because I really don't do diets, I guess. I mean, I do a diet that's specifically meant for the client themselves. But the general diets, like the paleo diet and the Atkins diet and things like that, I try and steer away from, because I really want to make sure that my clients are eating what they need to eat to heal themselves at that time in their lives, or to prepare themselves for whatever it is that
Okay.
they're planning.
So then if somebody comes in and seeks out your services, they've come in for their first appointment, and they've now got, I would assume, some kind of eating or general nutritional plan?
The first appointment is an initial consultation. It's 75 minutes long, and it's actually more of a discussion, and that's where a lot of the detective work comes in. I go through a full health history and family history of the client, and we talk a lot, so I get a feel for what they really want and what's really coming through for them and what's really important to them. And then also I get a feel for where things may have started and where the problem arose in the first place.
Okay. And then how do you monitor the progress over the sequence?
That's with the follow-up consultations. So
Okay.
45-minute follow-up consultations where we review their progress, and I'll give them, after the initial consultation, they'll have a few basic things to go home with.
Okay.
Not a lot in the first
Yeah, it's easy to
session,
overload people, isn't
because
it?
you don't, you don't want to overwhelm anybody.
Yeah.
But then they'll come back in the follow-up session, and I'll ask how those basic things went for them, and I'll get an idea of how to hold them accountable, and where the patient compliance lines are with them, so I can know how much to load them up
Okay.
with.
So you're looking at then, I gather, a decrease of the different symptoms that they would have come in with initially, or weight
Yes.
loss or weight gain or whatever it
Yes.
happens to be.
Yeah, whatever it is that they're looking to, like if they're dealing with disease, say they're dealing with cancer, for example, I'm looking for initially a general feeling of well-being. So they're feeling a little bit more energized over the first one or two follow-ups. And then we're looking into more details with their medical practitioners. Is the tumor decreasing and that kind of thing? Yeah.
We were talking about this question before we went on air. The idea of someone just going to a bookstore and getting a book on nutrition. I've had people say that to me as well. Why don't I can just go to the bookstore and get a book and
Yeah.
on stretching, for example, or
Yeah.
how to improve my back. Why would you tell somebody that they may want to come and see you as opposed to going and getting a book or a DVD and of course online nowadays too, there's so much available.
Yeah, there really is. I often tell my clients not to go online for the first few sessions that I'm with them.
Okay.
If they're feeling overwhelmed, if they're coming to me saying, I've read this and I looked at this and I really don't know what's good and what's bad anymore, and
Right.
I feel really confused, then I tell them to stop
Sure.
entirely until they get more of a sense of what's good for them, and they'll start to understand more of what I'm talking about and what direction they need to go in for themselves. I really believe that people would rather come see a person that is holding them accountable for their goals and really keeping them in line, and someone that they can trust and have a relationship with,
Sure.
rather than just reading a book. And reading a book and looking online is amazing. There's a lot of really great stuff out there, but it can get really confusing.
Mhm,
And I think a lot of people get really overwhelmed and they start to believe everything that they read.
Right.
And they think that everything is good for them. And what's good for them isn't necessarily good for their neighbors. So, they'll read something amazing and it might have worked for them, and then they'll go and tell their neighbor that it worked for them, and their neighbor won't have the same results because they're not the same person.
Is there one type of person or one type of symptoms that you typically see or you more often see in your practice?
Oh, stress. Stress
Stress.
is the biggest.
I see that in my practice a lot now too, and I'm starting to think that really our society is becoming very stressed, and it's starting to show up a lot in our bodies.
Yeah.
And nobody in mainstream medicine is really addressing that I've ever heard of lately anyways. And it's taking its toll on us.
Mm-hmm.
Stress, folks, we've got to start dealing with it somehow. So what do you do for that, or how do you help that person?
Well, it's really tough for people to go to their family doctor and say, I just feel crummy, and I'm tired, and I have no energy and my digestive system isn't working exactly how I want it to, or
Right.
you know, or I have insomnia even. But it, they can sometimes get somewhere with that. But if it's just a general feeling of discomfort and
Malaise
Yeah.
and fatigue.
they don't really get very far.
Okay.
And so they feel frustrated after numerous times of being turned down. Often that's when I start to see that's when I see them.
Okay.
And they've come to me because they're frustrated with their family doctor or whoever else they've been seeing, and they want some results.
They
and
wanna
they
feel
want
better.
someone to say, it's okay, that's normal, we can fix this.
Right.
So yeah, I go through a lot of like stress decreasing techniques.
Examples of those.
Breathing techniques. I recommend lifestyle changes, and sometimes a body, mind, spirit, general sort of connection, and mindful eating practices are really helpful for that. I almost always go over that with clients because I find it's really important that they know how to eat properly.
And it's surprising, isn't it? In a culture where we have so much food,
Yeah.
and we have very good quality food here on the island as well too. It's unfortunate when people are eating in a way that they're just not able to assimilate the nutrients in that food.
Assimilation.
You can't drive
yeah.
down the road with your cell phone going and eating your organic salad and expect to get much nutrition from
Yeah,
that salad. It
exactly.
is not going to happen.
Exactly. And I tell people all the time, you're eating 3 meals a day, sometimes snacks in between, and you're expecting all those nutrients just to somehow magically get into those cells and
Right.
and process normally through your digestive system. But really, everyone is eating in front of the TV, while reading a book, while driving, in front of their computer at work,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
the focus isn't on the food anymore, and
Right.
it's not on the nutrients involved, and it's not on learning how you can really change your digestive system.
I went on a 10-day meditation one time that was silent, and you only had 2 meals a day, and the last meal of the day was a very small meal, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to lose a lot of weight.
Oh,
And in
interesting.
that silence and that quiet of eating, just out of curiosity, I weighed myself before I went into the retreat. I weighed myself coming back out, which is something I don't normally do, and I actually gained 2 pounds
Yeah.
in just being able to eat mindfully and absorbing it. It
Yeah.
was quite phenomenal. So
That's
back to
quite
the
amazing.
stressful situation, the
Mhm.
person coming in with stress. Do you find that stress is often showing up in their dietary system, in their digestive system, I should say, or is it
Oh.
weight gain, or how does that stress show up physically?
It's different for most people. A lot of times it'll be an allergic reaction,
Okay.
or an
outright-
inflammatory reaction.
Inflammatory, outright allergies.
Yeah.
then. Ah,
So
okay.
skin irritation or lung congestion, even little things. Where I often look at, because traditional Chinese medicine, you look at the eyes, the tongue, the nails, the hair, the lines on the face.
Sure.
So I sometimes look for things like that, and I can really tell when someone's having an allergic reaction sometimes there as
Okay.
well. So there's that, and I think that they really. It's a lot of the digestive system.
A lot of
It's a
digestive.
lot of weight gain and a lot of the digestive system.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for people then that do have digestive issues, one of the things they may want to look at initially is how much stress do I have in my life, and how am I handling it?
Yeah.
And is it too much or too little?
hmm
Okay.
And how am I eating?
And how are you eating? Now, what do you mean by that? How am I eating?
So I'm talking about chewing your food.
Okay.
I'm talking about eating in a calm environment, breathing, slowly eating, and the intention behind the food that you're eating. So knowing where your food came from, I think, is really important. Having a relationship with it. So, really connecting to it so that you can sort of understand a bit more of like the nutrients that might be involved that you're actually putting into your body and what that might do for you.
Right. So for somebody who goes out and actually picks their strawberries on an early
Mhm.
Saturday morning, comes home and eats them, I'm sure there's a different feeling of that than just
It
getting
makes
a little
huge
package from
difference.
California
Exactly. Yeah.
and gobbling them down.
Even just cooking your own meal. You
Right.
cook your own meal and you feel this sense of gratitude.
Are you able to help people, or do you refer out to somebody who can help them learn, people who maybe have forgotten or not on how to cook an actual meal properly?
Yeah. I do some cooking classes and some
Okay.
classes or workshops. I work a lot with parents, family planning, and with children.
Okay.
So I do some workshops with the parents on how to feed their children. and it's actually really cool when I tell people to watch their kids eat, and they really understand that sort of childlike behavior when it comes to eating. You know, I don't want this, and they throw it on the floor.
Right.
And you know, I love this, and they really chew it, and they really love it so much.
You'll be happy here. I just took a Northern India cooking class, and so I'm now cooking a lot more Indian food at
Yeah.
home, which the spices I find are amazing to work with.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I use Indian food a lot of the time for resetting the body when it's out of balance.
Why is that?
Well, things like, well, actually not just Indian food, but some like khichdi, for example.
Okay.
Just a really well-cooked like rice with vegetables and lots of anti-inflammatory
Okay.
spices.
So that would help calm the inflammation down in the gut,
Yeah.
and then start the nutrients to be reabsorbed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is there anything else that you use in the way of foods like that? you-
Well, every food has a purpose, and every food has certain nutrients
Okay.
that are good for different things. So I always use food as medicine.
Sure. Sure. What about fermented foods?
Fermented foods, I always, especially with digestive problems, I'm always encouraging people to use fermented foods or fermented beverages and using them with their meals.
Okay.
Just a small bit of fermented food with a cooked meal or even on a salad or, yeah.
Wow. So really, somebody could come in and after a series of 3 or 4 treatments, really reset their dietary patterns with you, couldn't they?
Yeah.
And that would be quite a strong skill, a strong set of skills to have at home, especially with
Yeah.
children, to pass that on to the children.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Suzanne, thank you very much for coming on to the show. I hope that everybody tonight got some ideas on how you can start to use food as medicine and actually reset your dietary health, and an extension of that, really, your mental health as well,
Absolutely.
and even your relationships with people around you.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And how long have you been in practice?
2 years now?
2 years? And you're in Victoria?
I'm in Victoria. Well, I've been at this Absolute Therapy in Victoria
Okay.
on Oak Bay Avenue for not even a year yet, actually, probably about 8 months there.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming on to the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for
And
having
I'm
me.
sure what you've shared with everybody will be of value.
I hope so.
Thank you for watching Choices, folks. Next show, we're going to be on location at one of our local cafes where we will be watching one of the cafe owners produce grainless brownies. So for those of you that are trying to get away from carbohydrates and reduce the amount of carbs, this is certainly an interesting way of making very delicious snacks without using any grains. We'll also be having on the show after that somebody discussing Body Talk, which is a energetic manual way of resetting the patterns in the body. It's quite interesting. So until next time, thank you very much. And on behalf of all the crew here at Choices, we thank you for watching, and we hope you enjoyed the show and found it of some benefit and use. Until next time, stay healthy, and thank you. My name is Cameron Moffat, and I appreciate you watching. Bye for now.